everyone. Big news from President Biden on guns today. If you're interested in learning more about that, stay tuned after this. Okay, so President Biden has announced some new regulations on guns and gun ownership in the United States. He announced that as part of an executive order, and he had a little bit of an announcement. So let's listen to the first part of the announcement, and then we'll get into what the executive order means and what it doesn't mean. But before we jump right in, please like and subscribe if you enjoy what I do here, because it really helps build the channel up and get more people to see it. So let's listen to President Biden and see what he has to say.
You couldn't own any weapon you wanted to own. From the very beginning of the Second Amendment existed, certain people weren't allowed to have weapons. So the idea is just bizarre to suggest that some of the things we're recommending are contrary to the Constitution. Gun violence in this country is an epidemic. Let me say it again. Gun violence in this country is an epidemic.
So he's talking, as you may or may not know, in the United States, there's been, especially in recent history, a lot of mass shootings and just general gun violence across the country. We, on average, lose between 25,000 and 40,000 people every single year to gun violence. That includes suicides, murders, mass shootings, all that type of good stuff. And basically, what he's talking about as an epidemic is we're losing tens of thousands of people every single year. We need to address it as if it is a problem and what we need to do to move it forward. So let's continue to listen.
Today, I'm announcing several initial steps my administration is taking to curb this epidemic of gun violence. Much more need be done, but the first, want to rein in the proliferation of so-called ghost guns. These are guns that are homemade, built from a kit, that include directions on how to finish the firearm. You can go buy the kit.
Yeah, so why he talked about how this is just the first step. Gun laws generally need to be changed by Congress. There's some leeway in what the executive branch to do, which is what the president runs, and that's why he's focused in on what he can do within the current laws. So he mentions the first thing that they're talking about is ghost guns. And like he said, those are guns that aren't registered anywhere, no background checks. It's basically kits. So people buy these guns, they put them together themselves, and they move forward. So within 30 days, he's going to basically put in a rule that's what it's called at the executive branch. It's called a rule because it's basically a rule based on the law that's currently in place. Basically, it's going to make sure that it's basically going to ensure that these ghost kits, these ghost gun kits, are no longer available within 30 days. That's the goal because there's no serial number on there, so it makes it very hard to trace those guns back to the owners, especially when crimes are committed with the guns. So that's the big problem there.
The second action we're going to take, back in the year 2000, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms released a report on its investigations of firearms trafficking in America. The report was of pivotal value. It was an important tool for policymakers when I was in the Senate and beyond, at all levels, to stop firearms from being illegally diverted into dangerous hands. Today, with online sales and ghost guns, times and trafficking methods have changed, and we have to adjust.
So that's a major problem, especially in areas that have stronger gun laws compared to other areas. There's a lower gun crime, especially on the coast, because there's tougher gun laws there, and the surrounding states also have tough gun laws, so they kind of interact with each other to help make each other safe. But if you look at a state like Illinois, which has Chicago in it, which has high gun crime, and it's always pointed to as, hey, Illinois has tough gun laws. But the laws in the surrounding states like Indiana, Wisconsin, Iowa, Missouri, Kentucky, those are all states that touch Illinois, have really not very strong gun laws, and most of the guns that are used in Illinois crime, and Chicago crime in particular, are bought legally in those states and then brought in here. So what they're going to try to do is make sure that there's a way to track these and try to limit these, especially with online purchases and all that and all those things that are done online now, whereas opposed to doing at dealers.
The third change, we want to treat pistols modified with stabilizing braces with the seriousness they deserve. A stabilizing brace shook in a pencil essentially makes that pistol a hell of a lot more accurate than a mini rifle. As a result, it's more lethal, effectively turning it into a short-barreled rifle. That's what the alleged shooter in Boulder appears to have done.
So what he's talking about is the shooter in Boulder had turned his pistol into what amounts to a short-barreled rifle by putting a brace on it so he could brace it against his shoulder. And right now, that's not treated as a rifle, it's treated as a pistol. And what he's saying is that the Justice Department is going to make the manufacturers of those braces classified as making them into rifles, essentially. So that way they're more highly regulated and they can be traced. Again, a lot of this comes down to tracing and the Justice Department working through those options to help with tracing of the weapons and making sure that when crimes are committed, we know where the gun came from so we could try to mitigate it in the future.
Fourthly, during my campaign for president, I wanted to make it easier for states to adopt extreme risk protection order laws. They're also called red flag laws, which everybody in this lawn knows, but many people listening do not know. These laws allow a police or family member to petition a court in their jurisdiction and say, I want you to temporarily remove from the following people any firearm they may possess because they're a danger and a crisis. They're presenting a danger to themselves and to others.
Yeah, so that has been long on the list of things that we could easily do to help prevent gun violence. A lot of times perpetrators have a history of violence, but a lot of the states still allow them to own and purchase firearms, which is obviously not a good place to be. So red flag laws would put in place with court order. So it wouldn't just be somebody saying, hey, this person's a danger. This person, I should point to the camera. This person's a danger. He shouldn't be able to own a gun. It's taken into a court. The person will be able to defend themselves, and it's up to the court to say if this person is too dangerous to own a firearm. And that's what the red flag laws are.
More than half of all suicides, for example, involve the use of a firearm. But when a gun's not available, an attempt at suicide, the death rate drops precipitously. States that have red flag laws have seen the reduction in the number of suicides in their states. Every single month, by the way, an average of 53 women are shot and killed by an intimate partner. I wrote the Violence Against Women Act. It's been a constant struggle to keep it moving. We know red flag laws can have significant effect in protecting women from domestic violence. And we know red flag laws can stop mass shooters before they can act out their violent plans. I'm proud, excuse the point of personal privilege we used to say in the Senate, I'm proud that the red flag law in my home state of Delaware was named after my son, Attorney General Beau Biden, our son, excuse me, Joe, who proposed that legislation back in 2013. I want to see a national red flag law and legislation to incentivize states to enact their own red flag laws. Today, I asked the Justice Department to publish a model red flag legislation.
So the president presented a lot of good additional information there on why red flag laws are so important. And it's particular when it comes to domestic violence and suicide. Domestic violence is a major problem in this country. The Violence Against Women Act has been a fight almost every time to get reinstated. But the other big thing, like we talked about before, is suicide. Now, suicide by gun is highly effective, right? You shoot yourself in the head, you're likely to die. But using other methods of suicide are vastly less effective. And what we found from talking to people that have survived their suicide attempt is that they tend not to try again. So if they survive that first attempt, they don't do it again, which is going to save thousands and thousands of lives. So we have a really big problem with guns in this country, and this is obviously just the first step. We need some actual laws from Congress to fix it fully, but this is a good first step. Will it stop every shooter? No. All these little actions are designed to make small impacts, right? And as you add these small impacts up, they add to a bigger solution to them. So if we can find a way to at least eliminate the suicides from the gun violence, not fully, obviously, but a big chunk of them, just doing that will save thousands of lives, if not tens of thousands of lives a year. So there's a lot of good that can be done along the edges of gun safety laws, like background checks and all those things that are consistently in the news that are common sense, and we really should be doing them. The fact of the matter is there's one party that wants to fix these to save thousands of lives, and there's ones that really say no to anything. So right now the Democrats are trying to move this legislation forward. They have basically for the last 20 years, Republicans have stood in their way every single time. President Obama did a real big push after Newtown when 20-some kids got murdered in a mass shooting, if you don't remember, but nothing really changed. Background checks by themselves, enhanced background checks, are supported by over 90% of Americans, and we can't get that through. We can't get that passed. That's how sad. That's how much the Republicans are pushing back against this. So there are a lot of things that the president's going to try to do, and try to move the ball forward as far as he can within the current law. But we really need acts of Congress to move this further down the line to really try to rein in the amount of gun violence there is in this country. No other country in the world has the amount of gun violence that the United States have. And pretty much every Western country, every other developed Western country, that's what I'm talking about, don't have this type of gun violence. I don't think Americans are just generally more violent than the rest of the world. I think they have easier access to guns, which makes it that much easier to kill somebody. Things that might result in a fist fight somewhere else turn into a gunfight in the United States, which is what the main problem is here. So hopefully you got a little bit more information out of this video. If you did, please again, like the video below. In the comments below, tell me what you think should be the first thing Congress does to try to fix gun safety laws. Should it be universal background checks, some other straw buying, other types of gun safety? Obviously, we need to work within the confines of the Second Amendment. That's a whole other conversation we could have another day, but tell me below what you think Congress should do. Until I see you next time around the internet, you have a great night. Bye.